Okay, we're here with Mark Pavelich, owner of the Maximum Fighting Championships that's taking place at the River Creek Casino on July 25th. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Arnold.
Well, we've got a big fight coming up. Tell us a little bit about your main event.
Well, the initial opponent for Ryan Ford was Drew Fickett. And, everybody knows what happened with him. And basically we had many issues with Mr. Fickett. And, we're past all that now, and we have Pat Bam Bam Healy fighting for the title against Ryan Ford. And, people really are starting to realize that the draw now is not, it's not UFC fighters here. It's Ryan Ford fighters and a lot of other great fighters that I got something in the Maximum Fighting Championship. So, it's like if you put Ryan Ford against, I don't care who it is, people come here to see Ryan Ford. That's what it's all about.
Ryan Ford has been improving quite rapidly, and the thing is, Pat Healy is a very experienced opponent. What made you decide that you want to go with a guy like Pat Healy?
Well, I have to bring legitimacy to a belt. I see all these other organizations out there. Some of the opponents they put for a title fight, and guys got a record of 1-4 fighting for a title, and I could never do that in the Maximum Fighting Championship. So what happened is that I had to find someone that no one's going to say a word about. No one's ever going to bash Pat Healy or say he's not a gamer, or he's not a tough guy, or he's not, this guy choked out Carlos Condit, you know what I mean? And it's not like he choked out Carlos Condit, 10 years ago, he choked out, Carlos Condit's an awesome fighter. He choked him out. So that's how I assessed it. I needed to find somebody that actually I knew was going to not lay down, and guaranteed Pat Healy won't lay down for anybody.
You're absolutely right. One thing that people have always said about Ryan Ford is that he's got a lot of talent, but he's still raw. What do you have to say to those people?
I agree. He's been in the sport for 1 year, right? But he is more of a prolific fighter than George St. Pierre was at this point in his career. He's more of a personality than any fighter was anywhere at this point in their career. Like, Ryan Ford, his 6-0 is like other fighters, 15-0, because nobody carries the persona of a Ryan Ford. Nobody. Like, you walk with him. I was at the last UFC Montreal with Jason McDonald, and I was walking around with Ryan Ford, and everybody knew who he was, right? People were mauling him. And that's what people don't understand. It's like, it's not even hyping a guy up. He hypes himself up, man. I'm just stating the facts. He's a guy that, it can all mean nothing, though, right? If tomorrow night he goes there and Pat Healy walks out with this belt out of the Maximum Fighting Championship, Ryan Ford gets dropped down to another level. Ryan Ford goes in there and smashes Pat Healy. Guess what we have now, right? We have a guy who's 7-0 that in his last 3 fights smashed Pete Spratt, CJ Fernandez, and Pat Healy, and has been training a year in mixed martial arts. Think about it.
How long before you feel that a guy like Ryan Ford is going to be ready for the UFC?
Well, why don't we got to be ready for the UFC anymore, man? He's got to be ready for the Maximum Fighting Championship. I'm so tired of breeding great talent and then sending them off to the UFC. The Maximum Fighting Championship right now is paying Ryan Ford more money than the UFC would pay him, right? So I think it's a great thing that all fighters they esteem to go, I want to fight in the UFC, right? But if the Maximum Fighting Championship is ever going to compete on the grand scheme of things, I got to stop just rushing guys into the UFC and fighting for them. It's ridiculous. It makes no business sense whatsoever, Same with a Jason McDonald. When Jason McDonald was fighting in the Maximum Fighting Championship, he was selling, 700-800 tickets every show. It was like one button. He would sell 700-800 tickets. I build him up. I'm making a ton of money. All of a sudden I go, here, go to the UFC. You know what I mean? It makes no sense, right? So it's going to get to the point where, I'm sure Ryan Ford will say, yeah, one day he wants to fight in the UFC, right? But I'm in no rush to get him there. Financial-wise, for my organization, it's a ridiculous move to go, here, Ryan, you're going to become the MFC champ, you're going to win a bunch more fights, and then I'm going to just let you go to the UFC. It makes no sense.
All right, you mentioned Drew Fickett. I want to touch on that because that's a big thing here right now. Can you tell us from your words the story behind Drew Fickett? He was the original opponent for Ryan Ford, and then he signed a fight to fight in Strikeforce. Tell us what happened.
Well, the thing about I picked Drew Fickett because I think he's a phenomenal fighter, right? I'm not going to put, same when Jason McDonald fought for the belt in Maximum Fighting Championship, I put Patrick Cote against him, who I think is another great fighter, right? You're not going to come on my show and fight some chump. So I get Drew Fickett to fight. Then I find out that 3 weeks prior, he decides, I'm going to take a fight in Strikeforce, right? I try to call his manager about 50 times, no return phone call. So I lose my mind. I leave a stupid message on his manager's phone, and then it gets broadcasted all over the world, and that's kind of what happened. But I talked to Drew for the first time ever last week. So him and I spoke, and he really wants to do the fight with Ford. He apologized for making a lot of the comments he made about me because he doesn't even know who I am, right? And vice versa, right? I made some comments about him. I know I've apologized for my comments because he picked the fight with me first. So, I think Drew is such a talented fighter, but at the same time I think that he has issues with other things in his life that he needs to resolve before he really takes, mixed martial arts serious again.
So, is there a chance that we're going to see Drew Fickett back in the MFC? I mean, I read in one of your,
in this sport, it's so terrible. We always go, oh, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. That's not true either, right? I said, 2-3 weeks ago, oh, Drew Fickett will never fight in the MFC again, right? Now, the money play and the smart play for me is to do that fight in November. You know what I mean? Because you look at it and everybody wants to see the fight, right? But people don't lose track of what's going on here tomorrow night. Ryan Ford's fighting Pat Healy. He gets smashed by Pat Healy. No one wants to see him fight Drew now. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so the whole thing is it's all about winning.